In a previous video, I went over the best case scenario for the Switch 2, but now it's time to drop the positive talk for a bit, because in this video, I'm gonna go over the worst possible case scenario. The speculation in this video could very well become a reality. Don't underestimate Nintendo's ability to fail. So, let's get right into it. What is going on, everybody? This is Dylan of DSL Media, and today I'm going to be talking about the worst possible case scenarios for the Switch 2. Yeah, I know that some might look at the title of this video and rage that I'm being solely negative in this video, and that I'm going to be expecting the worst out of Nintendo. But really, this is just going over all of the worst possible case scenarios. It's kind of like, out of all the possible scenarios that could happen, these are the worst that could come out of it. Am I expecting all this to be true? No, I'm not. And plus, if you're looking to hear me talk more positively about the Switch 2, then check out my previous video, where I go over the best possible case scenario. But this is going to focus more on the negatives, all of the bad things that could come out of the Switch 2. So, let's go right into it. So in this scenario, we begin to see the prediction come out involving the pattern of Nintendo's successes and failures from the past couple console generations. Starting from the GameCube, that was at the time Nintendo's lowest selling home console ever. That was a failure. Then the Wii came out, and that was Nintendo's best selling system at the time. That was a success. The Wii U came after that, and that became Nintendo's poorest selling system of all time, doing even worse than the GameCube. That was a failure. And their next system, the Switch, became a high seller, and in this scenario, well, I mean, that is a success. But if what I say comes true, then this would follow the pattern of failure, success, and then the Switch 2 is a failure. Now, if that does happen, in order for that to happen, one thing I can see happening is that we might start seeing Nintendo becoming arrogant from the success of the Switch. I mean, that is a real possibility. It is something that all three companies, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, has fallen under, and where their platform becomes so successful that they think that they can do no wrong. And in the case of Nintendo, well, they might end up thinking that people are going to jump to the next Switch no matter what. And as a result, then they might repeat some of the same mistakes that they made, particularly with the Wii U. They might, for instance, give the next Switch the worst possible name. Like, I don't know, maybe they'll call it the Switch U, or the new Switch, or even better, they could call it the Switch P. Couldn't sound any worse than Wii, now could it? On top of that, like with the Wii U, we might see the Switch 2, U, P, whatever, become poorly marketed. I mean, with the Wii U, people thought that it was a tablet add-on for the Wii, and not an entirely new system. On top of that, Nintendo barely even promoted the Wii U, and when they did, it was often cringe. They tried to do the whole family time gaming ad campaign that involves Disney Channel style child acting and cringe lines from the parents.
Yeah, look like I've been upgraded.
It completely misses the mark by trying to market the Wii U not just towards younger audiences, but to a demographic that never even existed in the first place. Family time gaming. It's not a thing. On top of that, there was even a period where Nintendo actually decided to have campaigns where they'd have Wii U demos being displayed, being shown out of all places, Pottery Barn. Yes, Pottery Barn, the furniture store. Because, you know, I'm sure anyone who's looking for furniture to buy, the first thing they're gonna think about is playing a video game system. Like, yeah, I'm under a lot of stress of moving. The first thing I want to do is play on a video game console. while I'm shopping at freaking Pottery Barn. Brilliant, Nintendo. That's just very brilliant. We could very well see Nintendo regress back to that level of marketing with the Switch Successor. Now, I don't know if I exactly see the Switch Successor having the same level of confusion that the Wii U had, where people thought that was an add-on for the Wii. I think Nintendo would have to really try hard to deliberately be that bad at marketing the system. Like, how would they confuse people that much? I mean, there is the rumors and patents that indicate that the Switch 2 might be a dual screen, much like the DS systems. So, like what? Are people going to think that the Switch 2 is going to be an extra screen add-on for the original Switch? I just don't see how Nintendo could possibly find a way to market the Switch 2 as badly as they marketed the Wii U. But, I don't know, maybe they will find a way. Maybe Nintendo will end up proving me wrong with this. But I do at least think it is a possibility that Nintendo might revert back to the awful cringe ads that the Wii U had, and even have very few of those ads too. I mean, that could very well happen. We might see commercials that also involve child actors with cringe parents trying to bring the whole family together and play some Mario Party. And maybe one of those ads could have a "how do you do, fellow kids" moment that references Mario and Skibbity Toilet. I'm probably like 20 years too old to even understand that meme. But now, to go over what the worst case scenario is, as far as what the power of the system could be. Now, as established in the previous video, it is inevitable that the power of the Switch 2 is going to be last gen, as it isn't even possible for a portable system to have PlayStation 5 levels of power at this current time. But the real determining factor is how far last gen is the Switch 2 actually going to be. And there has been various speculating sources as to the type of chipset that they would use. Now, I mentioned in my previous video that the best case scenario would be that they would use the T239 chipset from Nvidia, and that would place it at the level of the PlayStation 4 Pro. But some are reporting that Nintendo wouldn't even do that, and are instead saying that Nintendo is going to use a more customized chipset from Nvidia that would place it at just being barely above the base PlayStation 4. That in turn would only make the Switch 2 just barely being more powerful than the original Switch. Some are saying this isn't a bad thing. Some are saying that, well, it's not about graphics, it's about games. But I really think that this would be a great mistake for Nintendo if they do place the Switch 2 at being just barely more powerful than the PlayStation 4. I mean, the PlayStation 4, when that system first launched, wasn't even really that powerful. Yes, it was the most powerful console that was released, definitely way more powerful than the Wii U, but also this was during a time when there were even affordable gaming PCs that can run games much better than the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One could at the time, that you can get for about the same price. And there were even games that developers even maxed out the power on both those systems. Just Cause 3 was a good example of that. The PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was struggling with destructive environments on games like that, and those were, at the time, current-gen games. And that was exactly the reason why the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X had to happen. It's because the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was falling behind. If the PlayStation 4 was this behind, even back then, well then, having the Switch 2 being only just barely more powerful than that would be even worse than when the PlayStation 4 launched. And that's not even going to have an equivalent to the PlayStation 4 Pro to develop 4K capable games on. So really, Nintendo would be much worse off if they made the Switch 2 be as powerful as the base PlayStation 4. And you know what having hardware this weak would also mean? It would mean that third-party developers would likely be turned off by the Switch 2. Same way they were turned off by the Wii U and Nintendo's previous systems. We might see a situation similar to the Wii U when it first launched, where it begins to look like third-party developers are supporting the system. With the Wii U, we were seeing developers like Ubisoft and Capcom being on board with it during launch, only for them to abandon ship very shortly afterwards. And the Wii U was left with virtually nothing as far as third-party support goes. I imagine we'd get something similar with the Switch 2 if that system is barely more powerful than the base PlayStation 4. We might see some of the third-party developers that supported the Switch last generation be on board during the Switch 2's launch. Like, I imagine some of it would be either ports or remasters of Xbox 360 games, or if it is something more current gen, then they might port over the PlayStation 4 version, since the base PlayStation 4 is still being supported. But very shortly afterwards, all that support is going to disappear the more that third-party developers are turned off by the Switch 2's antiquated hardware. And if that happens, well then, what would the Switch 2 have to rely on? Outside of indie gaming support, which I'm sure it's still going to get that, the main thing Nintendo would have to rely on is their first-party titles. Does anybody remember what that was like during the Wii U era? Nintendo's first-party titles was practically all they really had to rely on during the Wii U. And with no third-party support, this also means that the Switch 2 would be back on Nintendo's old pattern of having long droughts in between releases. This was something that happened even as far back as the GameCube, which got some third-party support during its first couple of years before that was drying up, and it was so bad that Nintendo made a deal with Capcom, and the Capcom 5 was announced in an attempt to bring life into the GameCube. And out of all the 5 games that was released, only one had remained exclusive, and that was the cult classic PN03. The rest was ported over to other systems, with Resident Evil 4 being a prime example of that. With the Wii U, the droughts were especially bad, because Nintendo was left with virtually no third-party support, and really, most of the games we had to look forward to from that system were Nintendo's first-party titles. And even on that front, they were kind of lacking, which leads me to my next point, and that is, if the Switch 2 has a very weak launch lineup. You remember the Wii U's launch lineup, there wasn't really any compelling games. Their main title, New Super Mario Bros. U, was basically an upscaled, modified version of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and it was a game that was bland as hell. That and Nintendo Land, which is a fun game, but it was basically a Wii U tech demo. In the worst case scenario for the Switch 2, Nintendo ends up deciding not to launch with Metroid Prime 4. In fact, it's possible that Nintendo may disappoint and keep that one exclusive to the original Switch. They also don't launch with something like a system-selling title. Like, not something like a Mario game that is a successor to Odyssey or anything of the sort. They might go with something like the next successor to 1-2 Switch. Or we may get maybe remastered ports of Switch games or a set of bare bones ports of third-party titles to make it seem like the Switch 2 is getting third-party support, only for those games to not sell. That can screw the system over from early adoption if it doesn't offer any must-have titles. Another thing that can screw the system over from early adoption, and this is the one that, out of all the worst-case scenarios, is something I can absolutely see Nintendo doing, and that is lack of backwards compatibility. Nintendo has been known and notorious for being very much against game preservation. This is also true with the shutdown of the Wii U and 3DS eShops, a whole library of games now legally unobtainable. This is the type of thing that makes people want to resort to piracy, but don't you dare do that, or Nintendo's coming after you. If Nintendo is not willing to keep games like that alive, well then, I could very well see them not offering backwards compatibility. And the reason why that is simple. They want to resell you the same games over and over again. They want you to buy Breath of the Wild, the half-baked, not-so-definitive edition, They want you to be subscribed to the Switch Online service, and that's where they might trickle out some of their old games and systems that way. I mean, maybe this is gonna be where they'll finally start to offer GameCube titles to the service through the Switch 2's online service. So, lack of backwards compatibility, I can absolutely see Nintendo doing. But ultimately, the thing that would really destroy the Switch 2 would be their competition. Now in this instance, I'm not talking about Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo, at this point, has pretty much established themselves as being in a different market than those two are. They're more about portable gaming at this point than anything else. But instead, what would really destroy the Switch 2 would be other portable gaming devices. Yes, talking about the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, and hell, maybe even throw in Aya Neo in that, even though their products are much, much more expensive. Now, I did say in the last video that there's always going to continue to be more powerful gaming devices for as long as the Switch 2 will be out. That is still true. But this also doesn't mean that the Switch 2 should be so far behind that it doesn't leave people enticed to buy the system. Nintendo still needs to make their system powerful and bring over not just first-party titles, but also a whole number of third-party support. Games that can run really good on the Steam Deck that could run just as good on the Switch 2. If Nintendo can offer all of that, then yeah, that will bring people over to the Switch 2. But if they don't offer that, then we are more than likely going to see another Wii U situation. Only this time around, it's not going to be from people flocking over to Microsoft and Sony. It's going to be from people flocking over to the Steam Deck and other portable PC gaming devices. And yes, I know there is always going to be that demographic that is going to buy the system no matter what, as well as Nintendo's first-party titles. But that demographic does not make up the majority of people who game. If it does, well then the Wii U probably would have been more successful. And I know some are going to say that, well, graphics and power does not matter, what matters is the games. But really, graphics and power does actually matter when we're talking about bringing over third-party developers, which in turn brings over more demographics of gamers and more people to buy the system. Not everybody is going to buy a Nintendo system just for Nintendo games. And with all of that put together, what would the sales figures of the Switch 2 look like? Well, I'll say this right now. I don't think it can do any worse than the Wii U. The only way I can see that happening is if the Switch 2's marketing is at the same level or even worse than the Wii U's marketing. And I honestly don't see how Nintendo could possibly market the Switch 2 that badly unless they really deliberately tried to poorly market the system. But what I do think is possible is for the system to still do poorly in sales if the system is only just barely more powerful than the PlayStation 4, if Nintendo doesn't have compelling launch titles, and if third-party developers are turned off from the system, that this becomes basically another first-party focused system with long droughts of titles in between releases. I mean, maybe it won't sell as bad as the Wii U, but I could definitely see this being another failure. That is a possibility. So now, having said all that, do I think that this is all going to happen? No, I don't think this is all going to happen. This video is basically just to highlight the worst possible case scenario that could happen of the Switch 2. Doesn't necessarily mean that I think it will, just that if we were to go through all of the various timelines, this is the one that could happen. And I'm going pretty much based off of Nintendo's past failures because, let's be honest, it is possible that all this could happen. But right now, I am just gonna hope for the best of the Switch 2 because, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. So now, what do you guys think? Do you look forward to the Switch 2? And do you think that all those worst possible scenarios could come true? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe to DSL Media for more content. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.